Members, I'm just going to switch the camera off myself. I think, yeah, Vicky has started the recording, so we can get cracking with the presentation. So thanks for inviting me along tonight. So we're just going to do some slides relating to the first draft of the local plan, and the consultation on the local plan starts on Monday and lasts for 8 weeks until the 14th of August, but we'll cover that a bit later on. So we intend to cover a number of different slides tonight, and that will include what is a local plan, the current position at Newcastle, some overview of proposals in the first draft local plan, and some background in terms of consultation and next steps. So what is a local plan? Well, a local plan sets the vision, objectives and development strategy for the borough. It also importantly sets a context for decision taking. It allocates sites, sets out an overall approach to development, how much development and where that development should be focused, but it also includes policies for determining plan applications. The current development plan in Newcastle, there's the core spatial strategy, which was adopted in 2009. We've also got SAVE policies from the local plan, which was adopted in 2003. And then we've got various minerals and waste local plans. And importantly, we've also got a suite of neighbourhood development plans as well. And they form the development plan for the borough, and it influences how plan applications are determined. So why produce a local plan? They're not easy things to produce, but we do it in order to help shape our places, direct where development takes place in the borough, but importantly, how that development also looks. It supports and provides certainty for local communities and helps meet identified needs in the borough. It also, in large part, protects the open countryside and other valuable parts of the borough, and can be used to leverage funding opportunities and attract investment in terms of supporting infrastructure and other matters as well. Importantly, it can also support decision taking, and an important element of that is providing for a minimum of a 5-year supply of housing, and we'll touch on that in some slides as we work through this slide pack. So this slide makes the point that there are tiers in planning guidance running from the national level, national planning policy framework and statements and associated guidance documents, running to the local, which is a local plan tends to be for individual authorities, and then the very local in terms of neighbourhood plans, setting out that very local context, focused on aspects such as design and other matters. Once we produce a local plan, that local plan is examined by an independent planning inspector, and that gives an opportunity for residents and stakeholders and other parties to express their views about the plan, and an independent planning inspector or inspectors decide whether the plan can be taken forward and adopted by the council. And in order to do that, the plan must pass the test of soundness as that's set out in national guidance. They must be positively prepared, meeting needs. They must be justified in terms of taking account of proportionate evidence. They must be effective and deliverable over a plan period, and they must be consistent with national policy as well to achieve sustainable development. Plans must also be legally compliant in terms of various legal tests that are set in terms of strategic environmental assessment of plan and programmes, and also the Habitats Directive in relation to environmental designations. Well, they also must be able to demonstrate effective cooperation, and that's through something called the duty to cooperate, which is requires councils and public bodies to engage constructively on an ongoing basis in relation to these are large-scale strategic cross-boundary matters. So why produce a local plan now? All councils are required to have a local plan. As outlined in the previous slides, some of our existing development plans have started to become dated. There's also a constant and consistent pressure to deliver more homes in order to being able to demonstrate a 5-year rolling land supply. And in order to inform that rolling position, there's a need to have a local plan so new allocations can support and deliver ongoing development in the borough. Changes in legislation recently mooted have not materialised. We've had a consultation on the changes to the National Planning Policy Framework earlier in the year, but the revised version hasn't been issued as yet. We've also got the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill working its way through Parliament, but again, that as we sit here today, there is a need to plan ahead and work within the existing context of the National Planning Policy Framework and other documents and legislation. Delay in producing a local plan may lead to a greater shortfall in particularly housing development and create issues for us in terms of being able to demonstrate a 5-year supply of housing, and also in terms of the housing delivery tests, which is another mechanism the government used to ensure that there's an ongoing provision of housing in the borough. And 5-year supply and other matters may leave the Borough Council exposed to hostile applications on unallocated sites and may lead to more planning appeals. The local plan also achieves a great deal of other things. And one of the important things that it does is it provides certainty for employment and economic growth, and can support things like town centres, which are essential for the local economy. And as we've just outlined at the bottom of this slide, failing to plan is planning to fail. In relation to the 5-year supply, we have a published figure as at the 31st of March 2022 of 7.3 years supply. However, in producing the first draft of the local plan and work with the planning appeal at Baldwin's Gate for up to 200 dwellings, the council has accepted that it's now no longer able to demonstrate a 5-year supply of housing. So the current position is 4.84 years, but that position is being further tested as part of the planning appeal at Baldwin's Gate, with a decision on that application expected in mid-July. And in terms of, you may ask yourself why there's been a drop in terms of the overall year supply. Well, there's many reasons that come into play there, much of which aren't in the council's control. But some examples include the sites in the existing supply may have been completed and therefore no longer form part of the housing supply. Planning permissions may not have been taken forward or have lapsed for many reasons. And also in terms of a lack of a local plan means no new allocations are working their way through the process. In the absence of a 5-year supply, paragraph 11D of the National Planning Policy Framework and the presumption in favour of development applies, and we've included an extract of the paragraph 11D in the slide there. Again, this points to a need for a local plan to support an ongoing supply of sites and also to provide certainty for residents and communities. So in terms of the local plan, there are a number of stages. They can take some time to prepare, but we're at the Regulation 18 consultation plan. So that covers essentially the scope and coverage of what a local plan should contain, and we're going to consult on that document from next week. Once we've finished that document and taken account of consultation responses and any new evidence that may arise, we then prepare the final draft and consult on that plan as well, and that's at what's called the Regulation 19 stage. We then, with the authority of full council, submit the final draft plan for examination. That examination takes place as an independent examination in public, and that's led by the independent inspector, as outlined earlier in the slide pack. There's a number of different mechanisms that the inspector could take, but in most cases, the inspector says that a plan can be found sound subject to a number of modifications that they work with the council to produce, and that normally results in a consultation on the proposed modifications to the plan that arise during the examination in public. Once that consultation is ended, the inspector then issues their report on the plan, which then allows the plan to be considered by full council for adoption. And then once the plan's adopted, there is normally a monitoring framework and a review of performance of the local plan as well. In terms of work to date on the local plan, we consulted on issues and options in 2021-22, had very good feedback to that consultation stage, which we've taken account of in producing the first draft local plan. The plan period runs from 2020 to 2040, so it's a 20-year timetable. By the time that will be adopted, that period may shorten in terms of the remaining years of the plan period. Our local development scheme, which is essentially a timetable for producing the local plan, sets out that we're consulting on this plan over the summer of this year, and then preparing the next plan early next year for submission to the planning inspectorate for public examination. Once the examination starts, it's normally in the auspices of the planning inspectorate in terms of determining the timetable for when the examination takes place, but will assist the inspector in terms of being able to meet timescales. And then, as outlined in the previous slides, once the plan inspectors issued their report, the council is then able to adopt the local plan by full council. Alongside a local plan, there's a suite of evidence-based documents which support the plan proposals. Just to illustrate that this plan will be supported by approximately 27 documents, and we've totaled it up to approximately 4,000 pages. And we've included some of the examples of the studies that support the local plan in that slide. The plan proposals plans a minimum of 7,160 dwellings, and that's an outcome of the standard method calculation that the government asks councils to produce as a starting point. And also, we've had advice that generates a minimum of 69 hectares of employment land in the borough. The first draft plan also includes consultation on the potential of some strategic employment sites to support investment and growth. And we'll talk about those strategic employment sites in a few slides to come. And as I've said, the position relating to housing has been supported by evidence in terms of the housing and economic needs assessment. The plan proposes a settlement hierarchy that is which attempts to identify the bigger areas and direct growth towards those as more sustainable centres. So we've got the strategic centre of Newcastle-on-the-Lyme, we've got the secondary urban centre of Kidsgrove, and then the plan identifies a number of rural centres below that and recognises that also they have an important role to play in terms of supporting the overall development requirements, but also supporting their vitality and viability going forward over the next 20 years. And then below that, we've got the other settlements in rural areas. So anything that isn't a strategic centre, urban centre or rural centre falls within the other settlements in rural areas tier. And that isn't a particular focus for growth in this plan. The settlement hierarchy in the last slide influences our distribution of development. So it aims to direct most of the developments to higher order centres of the borough, the more sustainable settlements. So as you can see from this slide, the majority of the development is focused towards the strategic centre of Newcastle-on-the-Lyme in the order of 4,800 homes, and then that's supported by the secondary centre at Kidsgrove, and a level of growth is also directed towards the rural centres. It's also important to note that existing commitments and completions which have taken place since 2020 contribute towards those overall numbers. So it isn't the case that we have to find 4,800 homes identified in the plan itself, as a number of homes have already had permission during that period. In terms of employment, which is an important part of the plan, we've taken an opportunity-led approach to employment sites, and we're also consulting on some options for more strategic scale growth, and that final position is to be included in the Regulation 19 plan, which will be the final draft plan that we'll look to prepare next year. Importantly, the plan also contains a number of policies. So these policies relate more to housing. So we've got a policy approach on affordable housing, mix and type of housing, how dense housing schemes should be depending on where they are in the borough. We've got a position on nationally described space standards, and also a policy position on accessibility standards for dwellings in terms of access and other arrangements. We've also got a policy approach to the identification of sites for gypsy travel and travelling show people. There are other areas as well in terms of the local plans. We've got policy approach to green belt and safeguarded land. We've got a policy approach to retail in terms of how we support our town centres and the sequential impact test. We've got a policy on infrastructure in terms of ensuring that infrastructure works alongside any development that comes forward. Importantly, we've got a policy on health and wellbeing in the plan, and that seeks to support health impact assessments and recognises the importance of that issue in the borough. We've got policies on design and climate change and renewable energy standards to support decision taking on schemes as they come forward. We've also got policies on transport, biodiversity net gain, and heritage. In terms, as I've outlined previously, the first draft plan contains 3 potential sites for strategic employment allocations. Now, these are sites of scale, over 25 hectares in size, and we've had consultants Asmore Verdi prepare a report which identifies the potential need for these sites and also gives a very general assessment of their suitability. Now, we recognise that due to the scale and location of these sites, that we're not proposing to allocate the sites at this stage, but we're seeking views both on the principle of allocating strategic employment sites in the borough and also seeking views on the site options themselves, informed by the evidence that Asmore Verdi have provided for us. We've also undertaken a detailed site selection process in terms of residential employment allocations. So we've sought to look at options within the existing urban areas primarily, and that's been informed by a brownfield call for sites and land register. We've also reviewed responses to the issues and options consultation, and importantly, we've looked at sites, including the call for sites processes and also our strategic housing employment land availability assessment, which basically includes all the site options that have been submitted to us in the borough. In terms of process, we've looked to the allocation of brownfield sites primarily, and then non-greenbelt sites first. We've discussed with our neighbouring authorities as part of duty to cooperate discussions to ask whether they can meet some of the borough's unmet housing need, and that engagement is ongoing. And despite best endeavours, all our neighbours have currently said that they're not in a position to assist us in terms of meeting any of our unmet housing need at this stage. We've also had a review of exceptional circumstances which are required to demonstrate greenbelt release, and again a note on this will be consulted on for people to be able to make comments during the consultation. Just this slide just makes the point that we've gone through a number of stages in terms of evaluating sites. We're currently at stage 6, so there's a public consultation input from statutory consultees. The site selection report will be published alongside the consultation, so people will be able to read through what we've done and our conclusions and make comments on those. But there's very much been a staged approach in terms of us identifying sites for development in the borough. And this site selection process has also been informed by lots of evidence, including our strategic housing employment land availability assessment and call for sites information, our sustainability appraisal and habitats regulation assessment, which are technical documents which help inform the plan, but also a great deal of evidence on infrastructure, landscape, transport, green belt, flood risk, and lots of other things as well. And the whole suite of evidence-based documents that I've said previously will be published alongside a plan for residents and communities to comment upon. As we noted, we've assessed approximately 141 sites in the plan making process, and the slide there just outlines how that's been split. In the draft plan, we're proposing to allocate 42 sites, and then we're also consulting on 3 strategic locations, as we previously noted, and the council hasn't expressed a view on those, but is seeking a view on the principle and location of those informed by our evidence base. So in terms of next steps, Cabinet received the report on the 6th of June and agreed to consult on the plan. As I've mentioned previously, we've got an 8-week public consultation, which is 2 weeks beyond the statutory 6-week requirements. The consultation starts on Monday and runs until the 14th of August. We'll then review every consultation response we received and undertake and complete any further evidence base required to support the plan proposals. We'll then look next year to consult on the final draft of the local plan, and that's the version the council considers sound and legally compliant, and that will be considered at full council. And then we submit the plan to the Secretary of State for examination before it can be adopted by the council. In terms of our consultation requirements, we have to consult in line with the Council Statement of Community Involvement, and this is an extract from that document. We're at the second row, so we're at the draft local plan stage. So as outlined on that slide, we've got requirements to publish press release and social media, display site notices, hold exhibitions, and enable responses to be received during the consultation period. Just a brief slide on how the plan looks in terms of its presentation. So we focused a box in terms of the main policy requirements itself. And then as you can see underneath the box, there's a space for any supporting information. And also there's then a space for related evidence, which will direct people to where we've got the evidence in support of that policy position. This is the final slide. So this is how we can encourage people to respond. So we've got a primary handle as seen on the website there. So our website /local plan. And then comments can be submitted via a consultation portal, which we access through that page. Or alternatively, they can write to us or email us. And again, those details we publish on our website for people to be able to respond appropriately to the consultation. We're going to hold a number of consultation events across the borough. And finally, yes, we just encourage responses at this stage to be prepared in a constructive way and outline if there are any concerns about the plan, how the plan could be improved. So yes, that's the end of the presentation. So I don't know if Vicky, you want to stop the recording now?